Welcome everyone. This is Mara Elaine, and this is another episode of the Earth and Cosmic Wisdom series. I have been interviewing and had the great pleasure to interview amazing people in the series thus far, and today is no different. I have a dear, dear sister that I met a couple of years ago, actually, synchronistically in the Chalice Well Gardens in Glastonbury, or Avalon as we call it. And ever since then, she has exploded into my heart as a really dear sister that I know I've known many lifetimes. And I've brought her on today to talk about her path and all of the wisdom that she has to share. So I'm going to just introduce her and tell you a little bit about her and then weave her in here. So today we have Annah Taylor Phinny, and we're going to call her Taylor. I'm going to be calling her Taylor as well today, but Anna is her chosen name at this time. And she is a priestess of Avalon, an author and a spiritual healer. She's honored to live her life truly in service to the goddess and feels her mission is to support the remembering of the divine feminine in all beings. She supports others in connecting with their ancient, wild selves through ceremony, retreats, and pilgrimages. She is the founder of her company called Avalon Calling, which offers pilgrimages to Glastonbury, Avalon, and the ancient sacred sites of the Great British Isles. Her offerings also include personal and group priestess sessions to build the framework of feminine wisdom and empowerment. Taylor received her master's in spiritual psychology from the University of Santa Monica with an emphasis on consciousness, health, and healing. She is also in the midst of about to release her forthcoming book, which is called Lady of the Lake, Rise: Breast Cancer as a Path to Wholeness Through the Eyes of a Priestess of Avalon. And this is due for release in early 2021. So I am absolutely delighted to have you with me here, Taylor. Welcome into our sacred space that we've crafted before coming on here to record. With all of the magic that you harness and that you embody so effortlessly and gracefully and with so much love. Delighted to have you sharing here today.
Oh, thank you so much, beloved sister. It is such a joy to be here with you, and just hearing you share about our meeting at the Chalice Well. I just remembered that deep soul connection that we felt. I mean, I remember hugging. Do you remember?
I do.
We hugged each other and we both started crying. It was such a visceral soul memory where our bodies didn't want to let go.
I know.
And I'll always remember that. And it was as if we picked up right where we left off.
It was like walking through an ancient portal of time, really, to meet in that place as well, because it's so special.
It is.
Right? Yeah.
It is so special.
Well, I'd love you to talk about that, about Avalon and those details on the place where we met, because it's so deep and there's so many esoteric layers to that place. But I'd love to start off for people that are listening, just to speak to us a little bit about your journey to becoming a priestess of Avalon, really, from your younger days.
Yes. Okay. From my younger days.
Yeah. So
I just want to say hello to everyone who's watching, and I'm so happy to be here sharing this space with you, and this connection with lovely Mara. So my journey really began when I was a little girl. I mean, as many of us are when we're children, we are connected to spirit. We're connected to, the veils are very thin, or possibly not even there when we're younger, and there's an openness and a fluidity in our communication with the spirit realm and with our memories, the things that we've come forward with from previous incarnations, the gifts and wisdom that is just accessible to children, and also the sight. There's a lot of openness in that space of innocence as a child.
Mm.
And so at that time, I was very connected to animals, to the trees, to the forest. I was often communing with flowers and fairies, and I had a telepathic relationship with my horse at a very young age. I grew up with horses. And at that time, especially as I got into my very young teen years, well, 13, 12,
Mm.
13, I started telling my parents that I was a witch.
Right.
And that specific word was very much in my consciousness.
Mm.
And I was very fortunate to have a dear friend at the time. We lived in Colorado, whose mother was an astrologer and read tarot cards, and was very much on this path. She really embodied that woman to me. So there
Right.
was a lot of safety that I felt in that expression, and I think that it was a real opening for me to meet her and to be in her home and to see her art and smell her
Mm.
burning sage, and it really activated even more memories at that age.
Right.
Um, and I would go to the bookstore after school and buy books about channeling and astrology and candle burning magic. And I was very much just in that energy field as a young girl, especially around age 12, 13.
Mm.
I started channeling at that age. I was giving friends past life regressions. There was a lot of memory that just started to activate at that time.
Wow.
And when I was in ninth grade, so age 14, I went to boarding school from the very small town that I lived in Colorado. And in the small town, I was very safe. I felt like very comfortable communicating in the ways that I was used to, talking about spirit guides, talking about auras. I would, excuse me, I would actually channel for my friends at school in the small town
Wow.
in Colorado or in Telluride. I would lay down on the floor of the library and just go into this space of channeling my spirit guide. Um, and it was like I just moved between those worlds really, really effortlessly.
Mm.
And so I brought all of that authenticity with me to boarding school and very quickly was judged,
Mm.
ostracized, made fun of, kids, you know, being afraid that I would cast spells on them, sort of making up stories about me staying up all night and casting spells and doing things in the dorm. And kids can be so cruel.
Yeah.
And I luckily had a very magical group of friends. There were three other girls that I really connected with, but that almost made it worse because it was like the coven sort of
Right.
archetype
Of course.
that was, and that whole kind of dynamic was really playing out again in this life of feeling that group of us were a threat to other students, and even teachers were afraid of us. And it was a um, very interesting experience. And at the time, I had always been so liked by friends, teachers, parents. I had never had an experience of really being disliked, really being misunderstood.
Right.
And ultimately, I was expelled from that school. And when I was in the meeting with the headmaster of the school, he said, "Kids around campus are calling you a witch. What do you have to say about that?" And I looked at him right in the eye and I just said, "I am a witch." And
Good. Good.
I remember seeing him shudder. I remember feeling the fear in this man who was much, much, much older than me and who I was very intimidated by.
Mm.
And feeling the power of what I said, I think maybe for the first time, because it was
Yeah.
so natural. that expression to me, I didn't really understand where the criticism was coming from, where the fear
Right.
was coming from. And in the moment of that exchange, I felt like, oh, this is very deep. This is much more than I am aware of.
Right.
In the response that came forward through him, and I was expelled from the school. Um, and that experience very much catalyzed just incredible amounts of terror. It really brought forward from what would have happened in another time
Mm,
in those circumstances. So I was very, afraid for my life, and uh, kept feeling the desire to run. There was a voice inside me that was like, run for the hills, run and hide, don't tell anyone where you're going, don't look back. And I had no context for where that level of fear would have been coming from because I was still only 14 years old.
of course.
So even though I was aware of all of these magical inclinations within me,
Yeah.
I didn't understand um, the history or herstory or like, what was behind it.
Right. Yeah.
So there was a lot of fragmentation that happened through that experience and a lot of shutting down.
Mm,
And it created so much confusion that I really just completely shut down. I was also put on medication.
mm,
And so for really the rest of my teen years, I was um, suppressed spiritually, emotionally, um, just went through a lot of fear. So that was really my
right.
first initiatory experience. And that living in that place of being shut down and disconnected really went on for 10 years until I
Right.
was in my early 20s. Um, so,
That's a very it's such a difficult transition, because
mhm,
you were coming from a natural magic innocent place and really catapulted into meeting the depth of all that the collective holds around the connotation of witch,
exactly,
really,
exactly.
which is so unfortunate. I think it's I think it's so crucial that you speak to this, as your experience, because I think it's still prevalent and it's ongoing, this this energy of the witch hunt and of the fear of the unknown that people have
Mhm,
around natural magic. It's such
mhm.
a huge one.
And it really is fear of nature,
Yeah.
like it really comes back to fear of the earth, fear of
Mm,
nature, fear of like our most natural expression, and the power of nature, the power of the elements, the power of the wind, the power of the sea. I mean, a witch really is a woman or a man
yeah.
who is at one with the elements, who works in communion and harmony with the forces of nature.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And so there's so much around the domination of nature and the earth,
Mm,
and like the pillaging of the earth and the disrespect of the earth that is directly connected with
mm.
um, the fear of that raw feminine power.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree with you, and I feel so. So for you, then, that shutting down and into the 20s, what was the catalyzer then to reopen that doorway for you?
So um, it was going to rehab actually. So
Okay, yeah.
I went into just a very confused space of not try of emptiness. I think I had
Mm,
such a void had been created within me, especially from being on medication and trying so
right.
desperately to find ways that I felt safe to connect again and to break down those barriers.
Mm,
And that is just the path that it led to for me in my early 20s, um, was through using drugs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think also what I've learned now is that when when there are significant aspects of the soul that are um, fragmented from the body
Mm.
or from the person's consciousness, that like a symptom of that can come through as illness or addiction or depression or things of that nature.
For
And
sure.
so, really, there was this place in me that was calling out to be filled. And really, what I desired was my soul. You know, to
Mm.
reclaim the parts of me from those places where they had been abandoned or cast away.
Mm.
And in many ways, that's really what anyone is doing who is having an experience like that or walking through an experience like that. They're yearning for themselves, for their own true essence, for their own wholeness, for the return of their own soul.
Mm. Mm.
And it was really the greatest gift to begin that journey through going to rehab. And shortly, and that very quickly kind of anchored me back in um, to that magical. I started to have glimpses again of that magical girl,
Yes.
and shortly thereafter, found the University of Santa Monica, where I studied spiritual psychology. And I think in the years before that, I was going to workshops on connecting to my intuition or angels or tarot cards, it was like that part of me that was very true and real sort of quickly came back in as soon as she had the opportunity to.
Yeah.
And there was a huge amount of fear of sharing that with anyone.
Of
So it was
course.
very compartmentalized and private, um, and took me many, many years. And really, my journey to becoming a priestess of Avalon in my 30s
Mm.
is what allowed me to dismantle all of the fear.
And that's a huge task. That's a
Mhm,
lifelong
mhm,
task, an ongoing task
mhm.
for both women and men, with regards to intuition, with regards to your natural and true self, and all that that encompasses. So
Absolutely.
definitely. And I feel, because you open so young into those realms, like to be at age 14 channeling in that way, that's not the normal way, and that you felt safe to do so was,
Mhm.
I'd say, it was even more of a shock to your soul to have to be jolted out of that into a completely different reality, right?
Exactly. Yes. Such a shock.
Mm.
I think there was, a young priestess self in me that was like, I remember why I'm here. I'm ready. Yeah, I'm ready. And I just did not have the skills or context or level of consciousness or conscious understanding to know
Yeah,
how to navigate all of those openings at that age.
of course. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it was quite a journey. You direct me where you want me to go next.
Yeah, and that, well, I hear you like that, because I feel that there wasn't the container for it. There wasn't the consciousness, probably in those times, as I can relate in my own pathway as well, for you to be fully expressed in that regard. It wasn't safe, and I feel like it's become safer in these, in latter years, in the last 10 years or so. How do you feel like, in terms of being a priestess in a modern context now, like what does that look like for you? What does that encompass really in
Mm.
what you're doing?
Well, to be a priestess, so I was mentioning the way that my understanding and experience is of being a witch, that it's about being one with the elements,
Yes.
and working with those elements to create one's life. And for me, really, the distinction between a witch and a priestess is that the priestess is really opening to become a clear vessel for the divine, for goddess, for the sacred feminine to flow through her and into the world and into the lives of others.
Mm.
And she's a bridge, she creates the bridge to bring goddess visible in the world, to help her to be seen, to help her to be remembered. And so it's really, again, about that open vessel, clear channel for the sacred feminine to come through. And I find that the goddess does become visible when um, people connect with the seasons, the magic of the seasons, the magic of the
Yes.
elements, when they start to see the metaphors in their lives, or the living archetypes or energies that are coming through in their lives, and when they are able to see like the mythology almost of their own life, when they can
Mm.
start to expand to understand their experience from a place of greater connection with the whole,
Yes.
experiencing themselves as part of the web of life,
Mm.
and entering into a deeper communion with life. And when we do that, we experience the divine. We can see
Mm.
and feel the divine, and see and feel the divine in everyone around us when we shift our perspective. And so for me, that's very much the role of the priestess, as a guide navigating those different um, landscapes, inner and outer landscapes.
Mm.
Also ritual, you know,
Yes.
ritual is my favorite place to be.
And
um,
mine. So
yes.
feel you. Are your so in terms of the priest, in terms of what drew you to the specific lineage, then what brought you to Avalon originally?
Okay. So thank you for bringing me
Yeah.
back to that. I guess I forgot to say that when I was in that space as a young girl in Colorado, that um, I had I had this book that I had purchased at the time, that had Stonehenge on the cover. And I
Ah.
just loved this book and the image of the stones. And I just remember looking at the image of the stones and sleeping with it next to my bedside. And I just knew that I had this deep longing
Mm.
to the stones. Really, that was the specific connection.
Right.
And by the time I was in my early 30s, I had done a lot of traveling, and I had actually been to England and Ireland and Scotland as a teen with my family. And I
Ah.
remember feeling a very deep sense of homecoming,
Mm.
kind of an eerie sense of homecoming at the time that I also couldn't quite understand, but I knew I felt very comfortable there. And then fast forward to my early 30s, I just started feeling a deep longing to Glastonbury specifically,
Right.
um, and found a retreat that I could go on. I signed up for a retreat with a woman named Mara Freeman,
Ah.
um,
Okay.
and
Lovely.
I went with her, my first pilgrimage to Glastonbury, and just completely, really changed my life.
Mm.
I mean, I really felt such a deep homecoming, truly the deepest sense of homecoming. And I, since that time, have heard an elder say that when Avalon claims you as her own, that you never really leave. And that has really been my experience. And I see that, I know that's yours also.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Definitely. I think it's such to speak to Avalon and what Avalon is, because a lot of people actually don't know that
Hmm.
Glastonbury is really like it's a mega portal, mega sacred site of our planet. It really
Yes.
holds so much significance. Would you like to speak a little bit about what that is?
Sure. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
So Avalon is the heart chakra of our planet. So the land of Glastonbury was at one time the Isle of Avalon. So we're going back thousands and thousands of years, and we don't actually quite understand in linear terms exactly when Avalon existed.
Mm.
However, there are connections between the legends of King Arthur with Avalon. However, I've really understood in spirit journeys that Avalon was far, far, far predated those times.
Right.
But Avalon was an island surrounded by a mystical lake that pilgrims or people seeking healing, support, um, guidance or answers in their lives through or through and from the priestesses of Avalon would travel there. And it was an island of magic, really an island of feminine wisdom, where priestesses would train in the arts of divination, ritual, astrology, herbalism, healing, sorcery, shape-shifting, and they lived in a deep communion with Goddess, in service to Goddess, and in communion with the land.
Right.
And there are many legends of the healing that took place in Avalon, and the call to Avalon that people felt as a place to go for healing. However, part of the story of Avalon is that it's surrounded by a lake, and the waters of the glassy lake are glassy like a mirror. And so the mirror of the lake shows you your reflection. So Avalon is also known as the Isle of Shadows, that you have to see your own reflection to look truly deeply into the dark, into the unknown, to see that which has been in the way of your attaining your purest state of being, or connecting truly with the medicine of your own heart, so that you may arrive on the holy isle. So that Avalon is also a metaphor for journeying through our own shadows and through the waters of our own unconscious, and arriving in the purity of our heart, in the temples of our heart, and the mysteries of our heart. And the mists of Avalon really symbolize the veils. And as we journey in Avalon, one would journey on a barge across the water, where a priestess would part the mists and bring them onto the isle. And that very much is still available. It still exists. Avalon has retreated behind the veil, so to speak, or it exists in another dimension, really. However, it's accessible through the landscape of Glastonbury, which was at one time Avalon. So there are big portals that exist in the energy fields in Glastonbury, and actually within the physical landscape in Glastonbury, that allow one to travel in their consciousness to Avalon. So it's very thinly veiled, easily accessible place to journey into that energy field. And in my experience being in Glastonbury, I experienced such a powerful acceleration. And I'm sure you have experienced this, Mara.
Yes.
But it really is a karmic accelerator, and activates, new potentials, new timelines, can align us to completely new, higher realities. And it helps us to clear and move through our karma in a very quick way, and sometimes can be quite painful.
Yeah.
And
disruptive.
And disruptive.
Yeah.
Yes, I was going to
Yeah.
say, and chaotic, disruptive, painful. It is really a place of power, and that's that shadow energy of the lake, and also the shadow energy of the heart. Like, one truly has to move through the shadows of their own heart to really experience the bliss and joy and ecstasy and connection and deep loving of that heart medicine. And of course, it's not one or the other, right? Like, we experience both, and all of
All
those
of it.
dimensions. You experience all of it when you're there in Avalon. It's not like you just are in the dark and then all of a sudden you're in the light.
Yeah.
It's everything simultaneously. Um, yeah.
It's so powerful. Oh my God, that land is just, it's so hard to articulate it to anyone, because you turn up in this small little, it's almost like a little village, and you're
Mm-hmm.
wondering, well, what's going on here? But it's just, it is so, it's the powerful, I mean, the earth, the elementals, the trees, the waters there.
The
Oh
waters,
my
yes.
God. I mean, I think that's where we met in the Chalice Well. For those that don't know what that is, it seems it's always the most sacred place for me. I feel so safe there and held through time, through all the lineages that have maybe congregated in that little space by those waters. It's
Mm.
beyond powerful, isn't it?
It
It's,
really is. It
oh,
really is.
I mean, I'm sure you've had unbelievable experiences there.
Mm.
And I know that for you, you've had like very real initiations in the last few years through being in Avalon, right? That
I have. I have. Yes, speaking to just one point that you were saying about the well, the
yes,
part of what makes the land in Glastonbury so potent is the ley lines and the earth currents that move through, and the Mary line goes right through the chalice well. So there's
that's
just
right.
such a feminine, charge to the water also, and so powerfully healing.
Potent.
So potent. Um, so yes, to answer your prompt and around my own personal initiation in Avalon. And I'll say that in my priestess tradition, we
Mm,
work with the Lady of Avalon, who's the goddess of the land of Avalon. And, you know, to move through an initiation is to really move into a space of direct communion with the divine. There's teachers and guides who can help facilitate an initiation. However, the direct initiatory experience is between the initiate and the divine, and between their own soul, their own uh, um, karmic unfolding and path of learning and evolution. It's really something that's catalyzed from within them and in communion with and relationship to the divine.
yes.
So a real initiation can't be something that another person bestows upon them. It's really,
Yeah.
maybe the other person is a conduit, but it's always about that communion with the divine.
Right. Of course.
And in my experience in Avalon, moving through a 3-year priestess training, where I went through initiations on the land each year, um, after the first year, and at that time in my life, I had spent quite a bit of time in Glastonbury. I had been traveling there for a few years before, and really communing with the land and really feeling the depth of my commitment to the land. It
Mm,
was very, very powerful. The connection that I felt to um, the physicality of actually being present with the land.
yeah.
And Mara, I'm just seeing that my battery is low.
No problem.
Oh
Let's
my
see.
gosh.
No problem. 1 second. We'll.
So, as I was saying, I felt that real commitment to the land, to journeying to the land, to being with the land and communing with that landscape in a very physical way. I know that there, of course, we can access everything from within, and we can journey on the inner planes. And for me, it felt very important that I was actually there in the land and making the journey.
Mm,
And after that first year, I discovered a lump in my breast at age 36,
mm,
um, shortly after my first initiation. and my first, ritual of making vows to the land and to the Lady of Avalon. Um, so that was a massive shock.
Yes.
And I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer at age 36. And so as I was journeying into my second spiral or second year of the priestess training, I was just descending into this very deep, dark underbelly of
Mm,
really my own emotional experience. But it was like the deep, most cast away, hidden, suppressed
mm,
terror, fear, trauma, pain, agony, despair from all lifetimes. It was like the collective shadow of everything that had been carried through. And I was pretty quickly catapulted into that space and experienced myself living in the underworlds, really existing in an underworld cave and seeing the world through the lens of the underworld.
wow.
Um, and so I was very much steeped in this mythical context, and I had this already,
Yeah.
I already had that way of viewing the world and this, spiritual orientation to life. And
Yes.
so I chose to harness that opportunity. I chose to harness it as an opportunity for spiritual evolution and growth and recognizing, okay, if this is what my soul has called in, then this is what
Mm,
I this is what I need to do. This is the most important work of my life. And really created a beautiful team of people around me to support me, healers and friends and prayer circles and um, spiritual counselors, and really just dove in the deepest way um, to harnessing and utilizing all of that material for as fuel for my growth.
wow. You're amazing. You're
Oh,
amazing. Oh
so
my
thank you.
gosh.
So
You know,
I went through chemo, radiation, mastectomy surgery. It was um, a, a, a full year of very intense medical treatment.
mm,
It was it was a fascinating experience bridging those worlds, the medical reality
I'm
and the
sure.
paradigm that reality exists in,
Yes.
simultaneously with um, the the reality of spirit, the reality of uh, communion with all that is, and of
Yeah.
the high self and the high wisdom and all that has come through from other lifetimes, and to bridge those things, and then also to bridge um, the physical healing journey and the very painful, real, dense experience of that
Yeah. Mm,
with the mystical experience of training as a priestess. And
right.
that is what I've written my book about,
Mm.
around that simultaneous journey of moving through all of those pieces at the same time.
I mean, what? How if that you were so committed to harnessing all of that and continuing with the path where I feel like many would have just only had the capacity to stay with the physical reality of what they were dealing with in terms of the enormity of
Yes.
meeting that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it takes an amazing courageous soul to be able to weave in the way that I understand that you have woven and moved through this initiation. It's huge, and I deeply honor you for that, and for all that you've for all the consciousness that you've brought to that process for many other women that
Mm.
you're connected to, whether they're conscious of it or not. It affects, it
Yes.
affects and ripples out far
It
beyond.
It does. I really, that's my purest intention with writing the book and sharing the book, is to show others what is possible
Mm,
in our healing journeys when those things arise in our
yes.
curriculum. The powerful opportunity that is being presented for soul retrieval, for deep multidimensional healing, for deep clearing of karma, of ancestral wounds,
Mm,
and the liberation that is available through that.
mm,
And it is definitely not easy, and I would never pretend that it was.
yeah, of
Um,
course not.
and I also really know that there is such a powerful opportunity to be seized when that is presented to a person in their life. And also from the
Yeah,
understanding of the soul, it's a curriculum has that one signed up for, right?
yeah, yeah.
So there's deep healing medicine that's available through
Mm,
those significant life events, and not even necessarily dis-ease, but just massive events of trauma or pain. There's always a very deep opportunity for healing on a soul level.
huge. Yeah, for
Mhm.
sure. It opens a huge gateway, doesn't it, into expansion on levels that we can't comprehend until we move through.
Exactly.
Well, I'm just like honoring your journey and what you've moved through, and the enormity of that, and that you're here, that you're vibrant and healthy and well, and
Mm.
showing up to help and assist other women on
Mm.
these levels, because it's so needed. It's so needed. This is the wisdom that is needed for this time and moving forward, when there is so much, I feel, that's crumbling, and so many walking through pathways of initiation that they don't know how to merge the
Yes.
spirit and the soul into their physical reality.
Mhm.
It's vital. It's vital when you've
It is.
embodied such an initiation.
It
So
is.
yeah, I'd love. So the book, you've been hard at work. How did the book, did it stream through? How did you feel as you were bringing that through?
Well, it came, I think really the spark of the idea for the book came when I was in bed, when I really was unwell.
Yeah,
And I was drifting in and out of these kind of visionary states of experiencing myself in the underworld and experiencing the dark goddess and experiencing, kind of all these different planes of my own consciousness.
right.
And um, I was writing a lot. I was journaling a lot about those experiences, and even when I wasn't well enough to journal, because sometimes there are points when I was just far too weak to even
Yeah,
pick up a pen, but I would take my phone and record my
brilliant.
own voice. And I remember um, that the light of the screen would hurt my eyes so much. The everything about, I was so, any kind of stimulation would create a
Mm,
lot of pain. But I would sit there with my eyes closed. I would like squint and hit the record button and then sit there with my eyes closed and record myself talking about my dreams, talking about the visions, talking about things that were coming through. And I just kept doing that. I just felt it was
wow.
important for me to do that.
Yeah,
It was such a
yeah.
strong calling. Um, and after my healing sessions, and I was drawing a lot, and
Mm,
I just continuously had that sense that I needed to get it on paper,
right.
move it outside of me, like from my inner
Yes.
world to the outer world. And I started experiencing a lot of synchronicities, between that, things that I would experience in the outer world, and then they would show up,
Mm,
things that I would feel like a specific thing that I would receive as a gift on the inner planes, then someone would actually bring that to me in my life. On the outer worlds,
right.
there was
Yeah.
a lot of that started to happen. And I just felt how beautiful it would be to record that for people, because I think so
Mm,
often that magic is all around us. It's like we were talking about that just earlier, around really
Yes.
recognizing the synchronicity, like recognizing that communion that we have with the divine all the
Mm,
time. And that if I could share that in a way that could help people to
mm,
find that those connections between their magical reality and the physical world reality,
yes.
in their own lives, and to like feel the connections between things that they dream and then things that happen in the outer world, and just kind of start to build those pathways
Yes.
in consciousness.
Mm,
And so I just was like in a space of collecting all of that information while I was going through treatment. And then
mm,
after going through treatment, I just started writing, and it was very much um, just stream of consciousness, and then having all of those things transcribed, all of my recordings. And it was a journey. Took about a year
oh, of
to,
course. That's
to
and even a year. That's amazing.
yeah, to weave it all together.
Did you feel a sense of synthesis or closure in bringing all of that together?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Oh my goddess, yes. It was such a cathartic process, and so much was revealed to me through writing. A lot of it I came to understand fully, or to really harness the fullness of the blessings and learnings as I was writing,
Yeah. Yeah.
and kind of experiencing the book come, it's really has its own consciousness, the way that it
Mm.
all came through. So I'm really excited to share it, and
Oh,
it's
I can't wait to read it.
yeah, I parallel my journey with the myth of Inanna, who is a goddess who was very much present with me. Her story was really kind of moving through me as I was in that dark space.
Mm,
And so she's an ancient Sumerian goddess who's the queen of heaven.
right.
And the story of Inanna is that she goes on a journey to visit Ereshkigal, her sister in the underworld.
Mm,
Um, and as she's moving, when she arrives at the underworld, she's met with 7 bolted gates, and there is a gatekeeper at each gate of the underworld that commands her to remove one of her royal garments. And each gate is symbolic or connected to a chakra.
right.
And so she starts with removing her crown, and then moves all the way until she removes her robe, and she's naked, and she's arrives in the underworld naked, where she's killed by her sister and hung on a hook to where she's suspended for 3 days and 3 nights. And then she's fed the water of life and is resurrected. And as she rises through and ascends through the 7 gateways, she reclaims all of her items, but she no longer identifies with them.
Mm,
They're like just the trappings of the outer world, but they're not who make her who she is. And the medicine of that story, the symbolism is that she's meeting her shadow, her
mm,
dark sister.
mm, right. Yeah.
Her shadow, all the parts of her that she's disowned, all of her shame, all the parts of her that she's not been willing to look at, or she's been afraid of, or didn't even know were there,
Mm,
uh, from other lives. Really, that's how it is. And in healing, and in
yeah.
this life, I'm aware of. And she reclaims all of that and embraces her and integrates her, and in that process of being in the underworld, so then she's initiated into the mysteries of death, into the mysteries of the unknown, and then she rises back and takes her throne as the queen of heaven, but she's in her full wholeness.
Mm,
And so I just love that story, and I
brilliant.
really resonated with Inanna. And so my book, the first half is the descent, and each chapter is one of the gateways I went through and what I was stripped of,
Right.
and then rising. The ascension is the second half, the ascent. Um,
I
and it's
love
not,
that.
yeah, and it's not in chronological order. It's very fluid and
Yeah.
spiraling, like the feminine journey, you know?
Exactly. There's no straight path there.
No, definitely
As we
not.
know.
No straight paths.
For sure there is not. I love that. That's so powerful. What a powerful journey for anyone to take with you through that.
Yes.
Amazing. Amazing. You think it maybe early next year it's out?
I hope so. That
Yeah,
is that
that's
is
the
the
vision.
yes, I'm working with a literary agent right now,
Yes.
in the process of, um, connecting with the right publisher to bring it forward.
That's important. Yeah.
Yes.
So for you in terms of Avalon and this ongoing relationship, then I mean it's this is going to be a lifelong partnership with the land there, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And you bring groups every year. Well, obviously this year is a no-go zone for many things.
2020 is a no-go.
Oh God, yeah.
Hmm. Yes, but I will be bringing a group there in 2021, and, it is just really, like, my heart's work, bringing groups of women on pilgrimage to Avalon.
Mm,
It is so beautiful what occurs in that group field. The connections, the sisterhood,
mm,
the deep healing, the memories. Um, I bring intentionally intimate groups, so that we can have that space, so that we can. There is that um, vulnerability that's very accessible and that feels safe within a group that's not too big,
yeah.
and that we have space in our ceremonies and, space in different sacred sites, that there's that, intimacy really, and that
Yeah.
special connection that's, fostered.
Mm.
We stay at St. Nectan's Glen in
Oh,
Tintagel, so we start there, and it's called Her Sacred Waters because
beautiful.
we work specifically with the waters and the water element.
Yeah.
Although all the elements are very much present and honored, but we
Mm,
really are bathing in the waters, working ritually with the waters,
mm.
um, and after staying at St. Nectan's Glen, we then journeyed to Glastonbury and stay at the Chalice Well,
Mm.
which is just
Yeah.
it really is my favorite place on earth.
Yeah. It is. It is. And it's just everything that's embedded multidimensionally into that little space and the keepers, the guardians of that space through the
Yeah,
dimensions. It's just super powerful and very sacredly held, isn't it?
it is very sacredly
Yeah.
held. And the communion with the elementals and the way
Mm.
that the elementals hold that space and move through the gardens, it's
Yeah. It's
magnificent.
it's small and tiny, but it's a whole universe.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It's the perfect way of describing.
Oh, it's a whole universe.
Mhm.
I mean, obviously, I know having experienced being on retreat with you. I've been with you at sacred sites, and I know the depth of all that you carry and the reverence for ritual and for all of the elemental realms. And I know even we've only experienced it once together, but you're really an avid tea ceremonialist as well.
Yes, yes, I am.
Oh, and that to me is a whole world that's just it's really deeply healing and magical.
It is a whole other exactly, a whole other world, a whole other universe, that
Yeah.
practice. But yes, I do, serve tea ceremony
Oh,
in the retreats. So that's
fabulous.
another way that we're actually drinking in the water,
Mm,
drinking in the waters of Avalon and the waters of Cornwall because we begin in Cornwall, but we're drinking fresh spring water with the tea in both places. And tea ceremony has been a part of my life for the last almost 10 years.
mm,
Um, that very magically and synchronistically came in on a journey to Asia in 2011, where my dear friend who I was traveling with and I synchronistically met a tea master through a series of magical events and unfoldings, and ended up staying with him in Taiwan
Mm,
for almost a month, and traveling all throughout China and the high mountains of China, and visiting old growth ancient tea tree forests, and really going through an initiation with tea,
mm.
uh, and bringing that practice home to California, to Venice Beach. We actually started a tea house, and um, ended up bringing the teacher, Wuda. His name is Wuda, and his organization is called Global Tea Hut.
Oh, yes.
And we brought him, to Venice, to our home, our tea house, and he began teaching workshops, and it really just, this whole tea community really exploded from that. And there's just so many beautiful beings practicing tea ceremony and offering tea ceremony all over the states and all over California,
Yeah.
specifically in Los Angeles, from that seeding. So it was a beautiful sacred contract
Mm,
that my friend and I had to bring that forward. And it's a powerful personal practice
oh,
for me, that, and I love sharing it with groups. It's such a beautiful daily ritual.
yeah. Yeah, and beyond powerful in my experience. It blew me away the first time I sat and had tea
Mm,
with a tea master, and I had no idea of the capacity of elemental connection and deep cellular healing that took place from
yeah.
these teas are just beyond.
Yes.
So I love that. I love that. Synergistic weave with the water, the tea, and then all of the elements that are present in Avalon, and all the
Mhm.
dimensions and
All the dimensions.
masters and everything else there. I love
Mm.
that.
I
Thank
do
you for
too.
bringing it. It's so unique to
I can't wait
you.
till we can share tea ceremony.
I know. Oh my gosh. Yes, please. Yes, please. Avalon maybe next.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. Um, well, I love that. So that's next year, and so all of your details, I'm obviously going to put on onto
Yes.
this. Um, so, is there anything else that you feel is alive for you before we close up this little dialogue here that you feel you'd like to just end our little container or sacred space with today?
I will send an Avalonian blessing to
Hmm.
everyone listening.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I just send my deep, heartfelt gratitude to each of you who are listening. I'm so grateful for you and for your presence and your energy and your gifts that you bring to this planet, the unique gifts that only you can bring. And I ask that the Lady of Avalon extends her arms out to wrap them around you in this moment, that you may feel the spirit of Avalon alive within you, bringing healing, inspiration, awakening of memories that are in alignment for you to remember for the highest good, that you feel held and supported on your path, and that you may open a new pathway within you to remember the magic that exists within you, that you may feel confident and safe to express that magic in your life and to bring it forward in a way that is authentic to you and healing to your soul and healing to the earth and those around you. And may the waters of Avalon anoint you, bringing blessings to your heart. And may the loving heart medicine of Avalon flow through the waters of your body, cleansing anything that is in the way of your truest and highest expression, just allowing it to cleanse and wash away. And may you move forward from this experience feeling grounded and rooted, connected to the heart of the earth, the crystalline core of Mother Earth. And feeling that crystalline energy rising up from the earth and moving through your body temple. Feeling stable and supported and protected as you continue to take the steps along your divine path. May your path be blessed in all ways, in all directions of time and space, sending so much light and love and blessings from the Lady of Avalon for the highest good of all concerned. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Blessed be.
Blessed be. Thank you, Annah Taylor. Love you.
Love
Thank
you
you,
so
sister.
much. Thank you, sister.
Thank you to all who've been with us.
Yes, thank you. I
With
appreciate
love.
you. Blessed be.
Thank you.